Welcome to In the Lab with Hoopsology. I am your host, Matt Thomas, joined by my best friend and co-host, Justin Goodrum. Justin, it's been a minute. How have you been?
Been pretty good. Yeah, it's been a while. A lot's happening in the basketball world. It seems we say this every summer. Just because there's not the regular season or postseason hoops happening doesn't mean there's a shortage of news. So I'm just glad to talk about it with you. How are you doing?
100% true. I'm doing great, thanks. Took up a little bit of baking. A friend of
Oh,
mine
cool.
gave me some sourdough starter, and I don't know if you know, but sourdough bread is like one of my favorite things.
Oh, sweet.
So going to start hopefully baking some fresh loaves in a minute here. But
Oh,
you're
cool.
absolutely right about the basketball season. This is what I usually call the gossip portion of the season, where we have the NBA offseason and all the headlines and all that stuff going on. On top of that, this year, of course, we have the Olympics. So there's not only gossip, but there's Team USA gossip. And that adds a whole nother layer to things. So looking forward to diving in to a lot of that with you, Justin. Real quick before we do, you guys listening probably already know, and watching probably already know, but share the show with a friend. We appreciate your support. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can follow us anywhere you're doing social media, and you can listen to us anywhere you're downloading your podcasts. Hoopsology podcast. We appreciate your guys' support as always. We're continuing to see growth over the summer in spite of this being the off season, gossip months, etc., as I just said. So again, really appreciate it. Let's dive into this, Justin. I figured, we had kind of our show rundown, all prepped, and all the work that we do for that. And then all of a sudden, we just kind of have to scrap it and lead with something else other than what was originally planned, which is totally fine because it's big news. And we have NBA media rights deal updates that are now official and news breaking. I don't think the drama's finished. We'll talk about that. But Justin, if you would please, I know you have a lot of info pulled up and ready to go on this. Honestly, you're probably a little more well-versed than I am on this at this moment. But yeah, if you want to lay on some of the finer points for the good listeners here.
Yeah, well, bear with me. And if you want the exclusive content, just a couple of Twitter accounts to check out: Front Office Sports, Sports Business Journal. Check them out. We've had a Sportico as well if you want to get like really in the nitty gritty of all the details. But bear with me; it's going to be a lot of quotes. So basically, what's gone down is that the NBA has inked about 77 billion in their new TV rights deal with ESPN, NBC, and Amazon. Now, this is the men's side of things, and TNT Sports that they're angry about this. So we'll get to them in a second, but I want to focus on the W at the moment because these deals, the NBA and WNBA, they are linked together, but then they're going in kind of different directions. So the WNBA, they're expected to sign a $2.2 billion deal over 11 years. So I want to
Wow.
talk about the W first. So right now with the WNBA, basically, my opinion is that that's a really low deal, a
Hmm.
really disrespectful deal. I want to read what
Hmm.
Cheryl Miller said at the All-Star Game. It says, "quote." And Cheryl Miller coached the Team WNBA All-Stars. She said, "quote, I'm not great with numbers, low ball, when said speaking with reporters. That's a low ball, not enough, not even close. Now, I'm not trying to inflate it a whole lot, but a two is nice. An eight will be better in terms of billions of dollars. That's what I'm talking about because they know." And then she went into like I'm paraphrasing here, but somebody should be in a room like as a hard negotiator. And I agree with her. Like this is an 11-year deal, and $2.2 billion is not that much. I mean, you do the math. What is that like $200 million? And then there's around 60 million in play of additional TV rights deals that could go to Ion or CBS Sports. So right now, how it's going down, if I can read this here. So this is WNBA. So the WNBA will be on Disney, so that's ESPN, ABC. Then you have Prime Video, and you have NBC. So this is huge because along with the NBA going back to NBC, the WNBA is returning to NBC too. Now, what's weird is that I don't know if you ever watched NBC Sports Network, Matt, ever, but they don't
Hmm.
have a sports network to my knowledge. So that's a little weird just in terms of how this deal is going to work in terms of a lot of their content on Peacock. So the WNBA Finals is going to rotate between Disney, which is ESPN, ABC, Prime Video, and NBCU. And then Prime Video is going to expand distribution rights for the WNBA League Pass globally. So it says here that Disney will telecast the first 2 series per year, while NBCU and Prime Video will each telecast 1 round series annually. The semifinals and the finals will rotate over an 11-year term. Disney, ABC, ESPN will distribute 8 semifinal series and the 5 finals, and Prime Video and NBCU each distributing 7 semifinals and 3 finals. So what's concerning is that if you watch the games on Amazon One, I don't know, for any Amazon fans, I apologize, but I think their interface sucks. I don't know if you have Amazon. I don't know if you have Prime Video, but I don't think it's user friendly. In my opinion, especially now that they're going to have the NBA and the NFL, yes, some MMA. Like, I don't think it's necessarily user friendly to live content, in my humble opinion. Once you actually start watching the content, I think it's an awesome experience. But finding it just aesthetically pleasing, not a huge fan of it. Number 2 is that if you watch the WNBA games, and this is what happened actually to the NFL. NFL actually, what's it called? They didn't have an in-house, like, in-studio team. They kind of piecemealed their Thursday night football games together, and then now they have a consistent crew that they have the games every Thursday. And so with the WNBA, from what I have seen, correct me if I'm wrong, put this in the comments, but what I have seen is that these games are being basically broadcasted from a regional sports provider. So let's say the Fever are playing the Lynx, is going to be an Amazon Prime Video. Pat Boylan's calling that game, but Pat Boylan doesn't work for Amazon. He works for the Indiana Fever. So that's where my concern is just the WNBA is going to get a lot more games. How is their sports department going to go? And the NBA too. Like, how's this going to work? Though that's my curiosity. If like the TNT crew, I'm not necessarily talking about inside the NBA, but all their producers, coordinators, video operators, all that, does that transfer to Amazon or NBC? That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So here, I'll keep going. So Prime Video, this is for the NBA and the WNBA in 2025. So they'll get regular season games, playoff games, conference finals, play-in tournament, the NBA Cup, which is the in-season tournament, a Black Friday game, which is interesting because Black Friday, correct me if I'm wrong, the NFL had that date. So I'm wondering how that's going to work. You're going to do both the NBA and NFL. You have the WNBA Commissioner's Cup Championship, WNBA postseason and finals, as I said before. So let's get to Peacock. So NBC Universal. So I've heard a lot of complaints about Peacock, right? Like in terms of the NFL. I don't know if you remember, there was a playoff game on Peacock. Everybody lost their minds. But yeah, Peacock still got a huge ratings boost from it. I like Peacock. You love The Office. You love WWE. Peacock's their streaming service. They got some cool movies. But this is by far a huge cue for Peacock. So NBCU will distribute up to 100 NBA regular season games per season, with more than half of the games aired on NBC on Sunday and Tuesday nights. And that's going to be very interesting because, Tuesday night for if correct me if I'm wrong, when we're younger, that's a huge TV night for families. Now, that's a sports night. And especially on NBC, that's going to be a huge kind of kink in their plans. So basically, it says that NBCU will telecast the league's opening night doubleheader on NBC each year, and at least 2 games will be on MLK Day, which is normally the TNT. That's their games. That will be on NBC and on Peacock. And then I'll just mention this, and then we can kind of talk about ESPN real quick. NBC will be the home of the NBA All-Star Game, Rising Stars State Farm All-Star Saturday Night, featuring the slam dunk competition, 3-point contest, and skills challenge. So that's a change because that's been on cable. Now that will be on regular TV. And I think just as a kid, I don't know if you remember where you remember Inside Stuff, right? With Summer Sanders and Ahmad Rashad. Yeah. I don't know if you remember, they had stuff for kids for All-Star Saturday where they had like a mascot game. They had like a huge thing. It's all for kids. And that was before All-Star Saturday night. So hopefully that will come back because I think kids and youth is really a huge part of the NBA that no one talks about. So NBC will telecast one of the 2 conference final series games in 6 of the 11 years on a rotating basis with Amazon beginning in 2025 2026. And basically, ESPN, they kind of have the same deal. I think they lost out on some things. I know they will not be the exclusive home of the WNBA finals, but in a nutshell, their games stay the same, give or take some changes. They still get the finals, and they still get, I believe, Eastern or Western Conference finals, depending on how it works. So I said a lot there, Matt. What are your overall thoughts and your impressions of what went down? Of gossip?
Well, Justin, you did a great job there, so I commend you for that. But you forgot the most important point.
Oh, I know. I'll leave it to you.
And you know exactly what I'm going to say. I appreciate it. I appreciate you letting me get this line in, this corny joke. But I am honestly a little bit excited about it. With NBC getting the rights to NBA footage again, we get the return of one of the greatest sports songs, maybe the greatest of all time, Round Ball Rock. You all remember basketball in the 90s on NBC. If you are around just in my age or a little bit older, Round Ball Rock, fantastic. YouTube it if you don't know. It's coming back. We get that back. So I'll start on a positive note with that, I guess. Overall thoughts. Interesting to hear what you mentioned with broadcasting potentially being outsourced in some of these cases. You brought up the example with the WNBA and with how Prime is going to utilize that, outsourcing to maybe like the Fever crew, for example, for Caitlin Clark home games. I don't know. I don't know that I fully dislike that or am against that. I think there are a lot of good broadcasting teams, and it's interesting to me like what that will look like. Like, does the broadcasting team there get a little bit of a slice of the pie for, this use of being outsourced like that from Prime? I'm curious to see. It could be a very good thing. I feel like sports in general, and I want to be sure not to digress too much here, but sports lacks a local regional feel in the way it has been in the 2010s specifically and beyond. That could be something that gives a little bit more of a local feel. Yes, the downside is you will get some homer broadcasts from time to time, but I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing in terms of entertainment value. So I'm curious to keep my eyes on how that develops. I don't know that I'm necessarily fully against it. I do think you're right about Prime's layout and not being as user friendly. I think the whole thing in general, we're going to field, not you and me, but the NBA media in general is just going to have to withstand a lot of complaints about a change in habits, basically, big picture. You're getting your fans to do a new thing, click into the new app, click to a different location, search for it by name if you have to, if it's really inconvenient to find it. That's going to get a lot of complaints. I think with the deal with the WNBA, $2.2 billion is interesting because it sounds like a lot in some respects. When you compare that to, 77 million, I believe is the number you just quoted for the NBA.
Billion.
Of course, that's billion. I'm sorry. Here I am pulling a Dr. Evil. Don't you think we should ask for more? Of course, it's a small fraction of what the NBA got. That doesn't surprise me. I think probably this is not to say I agree with it, but I think the perspective would be we've had a long time that's been documented that the WNBA has been propped up by the NBA, has not been profitable in its own right. We've seen, as you and I have talked about, the ratings have gradually increased, and then there's kind of this flashpoint this year where the ratings have really spiked. And I just wonder, there must have been some shrewd negotiations, a bunch of no's on the other side about, we've seen one season with this, whatever you want to call it, Caitlin Clark effect, or just season with much higher ratings and interest. And I don't know if they buy that they get that over a 10-year span, or if this is an outlier thing for this year. I do think I would have expected them to get a little bit more. I hope the big picture thing in all of this is that the league is now self-sustainable and the league can, pay its players, not operating at a loss as it was before in very recent seasons. So in that sense, maybe it sounds like small potatoes to a lot of people, but that is a big step forward to
It
be
is.
self-sufficient. However, like you mentioned, over the course of 10 years, I mean, if Caitlin Clark ends up being the Michael Jordan of the WNBA, you're not going to see the effects of this until the next media deal hits.
Yeah.
And that's now inked in. That's not just
Yeah.
postulating.
Yeah. Opposite a counter. I
Sure.
think this is a poor deal for the WNBA. I feel just take out like fighting for women's rights, the morality standpoint, and look at the TV landscape. So right now, it's very clear that TV sports rights are the most valuable television. I would say TV sports rights and news and the election style gets the most attention, right? So unless there's a Super Bowl, there's a presidential debate, elections. And
Yeah,
then
really only
sports.
election season
Yeah,
at
election
this
season.
point with
Yeah,
news.
I
Yeah.
agree. So if you take a look, I'm because the thing is that I always look at WWE, right? So back in 2019, WWE, the product was terrible, but yet they are able to get a pretty solid deal with Fox and with USA, and then they renewed, and now they're going to be on Netflix. And I think what we saw with overall the Netflix deal compared to their Fox and USA deal is that I think the landscape has cooled a little bit in terms of streaming. I think you've seen a lot of these broadcasters really not be so bullish on live sports content. Now, the thing is, why I say this is a bad deal, is the length of time. That's my problem with this. 11 years is a long time. And if you take
Yeah.
a look at the future of this league, and I agree, the logic says you're right. The league has struggled. A lot of teams have gone under. This has been a league that has been mismanaged from multiple fronts if you take a look at the history of this league. However, if you take a look at pure stars, Caitlin Clark, star, Angel Reese, star, Asia Wilson, star. You take a look at all the team players in the WNBA, they are garnering ratings. You take a look at just Team USA in Paris. They had a huge not ratings, but huge attendance increase. That team doesn't have Caitlin Clark on it. So clearly there's an attention on United States basketball. And if you take a look at the incoming class of Juju Watkins, Paige Buckers, Haley Van Lith, as we've talked about earlier, there is no doubt that there is a pool of just, I think, potential fans to gravitate towards the WNBA over a long period of time. So when you're in year 5, and now all of a sudden you have Juju Watkins, Paige Buckers, Angel Reese, and Caitlin Clark, we're not even mentioning all your Arika Abumawale, who just killed in a WNBA All-Star game. We're not even mentioning the players that are killing it now currently in the league. That are in line for MVP. We're just talking about the rookies. I think the value of this league is really underserved so far. And I think proven to this point is just the discussion about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese about the rookie of the year and the WNBA All-Star game as a whole in terms of the rating increase that they have experienced. So the length of this deal is where I have a huge problem with the value, just in terms of the league getting a fair shake, even though, the deal has a B in front of it instead of an M. I think to me, the length, that's where there's a problem. I don't know the intricacies of the deal where they can renegotiate after a certain amount of time, but hopefully that is the case for them.
Yeah. And to your point, I think if you see the ratings boom that happened just before this deal was negotiated, if you see that stretched out even for another 2 years, another 3 years, up to 5 years, then I think it seems to me the length of this deal is very friendly to the broadcasting companies, to the big companies that are paying the billions to be able to broadcast. Yeah, it seems like they would be able to construct even further confidence in this being its own viable product with a very real future in front of it. And I also wonder, I mean, I guess maybe because the WNBA kind of has for a long time operated under the wing of the NBA. Maybe that's why this all had to be negotiated together in this one deal, kind of set it up this way given the past history. But I think also at a certain point, them being linked together like that may be detrimental. Whereas if they were individual partners in this, individually representing themselves, now that they are sustainable and profitable, maybe there would be a lot more flexibility and options for them to, garner a greater deal.
Yeah, I would say this point, and then we can pivot to the NBA TV rights deals. I just feel this kind of leads to my frustration with this league is that until Caitlin Clark came along, the league was very passive. Charter flights. It was just like, well, we gotta get the money for it. Like TV coverage. Well, it's just we have to wait, and it's all these excuses. Where the league just deserves better, and the league is handicapping themselves by continuing to put these roadblocks that could be fixed. So to me, I think overall, I think the salaries of the players will go up. I don't know by how much. I'm not sure. We'll have to have a salary cap expert to break this down in terms of how that affects the players and their renegotiations of their CBA. But I don't know. To me, I think you might be onto something, man. In terms of them being a cohesive entity, them splitting apart. I don't know. To me, I'm like I agree with Cheryl Miller. I think it's a very disappointing number because I would understand if the landscape was TV ratings for college basketball was poor, and there was like a lot of just the landscape was very similar to the NBA, where a lot of freshmen coming out of high school were just going to the WNBA. They didn't have that much fan followings, and college didn't matter. But it does matter in women's basketball, and the ratings are solid. So to me, just if you're just looking at numbers, I just don't understand why there's not more of a full-time investment into just professional hoops overall. So I don't know. I am a little bit disappointed.
I think it has to be said too that another thing that factors into this that I think a lot of people won't think about is that the WNBA runs as a much shorter season.
They do.
And that automatically cuts a lot of your profits that you would have the potential to get. Is just that there's less games available to broadcast.
Fair. That's an excellent point. That is fair. There's less inventory for them to sell. So that makes sense.
Right.
You're right.
Now I'm not refuting the woes that they have about that number that they got compared to what they may have been expecting. But I think a lot of the narratives about people who maybe are just acting instantly with emotion, which you and I both know happens a lot on social media. I think a lot of people will say they deserved every bit as much as the NBA in this deal. In terms of inventory, like you just mentioned there, that's just not possible.
It's not possible. And the teams, they have 12 teams.
Correct.
I mean, just look at it logically. Like, to me, my issue is just the length of the deal. Like, for 11 years, that's tough. Like, why not 5? Why not 6 and revisit it later? I mean, WWE's in a similar situation, but I think they have a thing where they can renegotiate after 5 or 6 years for Raw only. And then they have a whole international distribution deal too. But with the WNBA, you're right. I mean, they're expanding to Toronto, they're expanding to Golden State, and they're going to be aggressive on expanding to other states. But still, it's not a lot of teams. And this league, I just saw a video of just past WNBA teams. I mean, they had teams in Sacramento. I mean, you remember Tisha Penichero and Portland had a team in Houston. I mean, Houston Comets are one of the most decorated franchises in the NBA history. They don't even exist. So, to me, I think for people saying, well, they deserve the same amount as the men, it's not equal. I mean, there's 30 teams, and then there's more games for them to sell. So it's just that's the apples to oranges comparison in terms. And to believe me, I am all about fighting discrimination and just making sure things are equal. But it's not equal just due to the NBA and their level of just inventory and games. So it just kind of you can't really, fight just to be outraged that you're not giving $77 billion. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah. So pivoting back to the NBA side of things. You probably saw this, maybe not. I'll bring it up just in
Sure.
case. I think
Yeah.
we were going to get into this anyway. On the TNT side of things,
Yes.
that's another thing that fans are going to
Yes.
be super disappointed about. Friend of the show, Richard Deitch. I don't know if you saw his post on
No,
X,
I didn't.
but TNT has already announced in a statement
Yep.
that they are getting ready to sue um, over, basically go to court over this deal. They feel like from their statement that their contract entitled them to matching Amazon's amount. They claim that they did do that, did want to do that, and were denied that. So now this thing might be tied up in court for a little while as well. Justin, I'll be honest, just looking at it at face value, it smells to me of we actually don't want this, but we want to make this push and outrage that will show people, help our brand, kind of have this perception that, we tried to keep this going for you guys, but man, they just wouldn't let it. When maybe that wasn't the case. Now, I have no inside intel that that is the case. That's just what it looks like on face value to me. I can't imagine at this point, with all these announcements coming out, that a lawsuit like that will be effective and things will flip around. But I guess we will wait and see. Thoughts on the TNT side of this?
Yeah, early impressions is that I don't know if this is going to be successful. I do think it's more than just like a publicity play, though. I
Hmm.
do, from what I have heard, if they lose the NBA, it would be devastating. And I think the thing is too is that they want Amazon's offer, not NBC's. So they're already going to get really hurt because their main part of their NBC coverage of their NBA coverage is gone. It's gone to NBC. So they're only going to get Amazon, which is it's not the same as they had before.
Hmm.
So now they have been kind of preparing for this. TNT has in terms of the Mountain West. That's interest to us. That's going to be on TNT. I think part of the college football playoff. I think that's going to be on TNT. I believe tennis, and then for wrestling fans, AEW. Their negotiations. They're going back and forth. So overall, but what I have heard, them losing the NBA, in terms of their carrier fees on all these satellite providers and cable providers, that is a question of how much that's going to hurt them, their value. Because to me, I don't know, I'm not watching. I mean, if I wasn't a wrestling fan, there's no. I mean, I'm not the typical viewer because I like Mountain West, I like wrestling, so I think they keep me as a viewer, but I'm in a very very stark minority. Or
It's gutting
yeah,
on the
if you don't
mainstream
have
level.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you don't have the NBA, that is really hard. The college football playoff, that's huge. That is a huge cue for them. But
yeah.
other than that, they gotta hope baseball's on the upswing. Like they have baseball still, so if they can capitalize on that. But you losing the NBA, they don't have the NFL. I mean, that's a huge blow to them.
Mhm. Well, and people just aren't now, college football being the exception, that's a huge deal,
Yeah.
but aside from that, people aren't really talking about those other things you brought up like they are the NBA.
No,
So,
sure.
and we knew it was coming if Warner Bros were to lose this, and everything go down, um, and it's kind of gone down as expected. It's been split up, and I think that's interesting with kind of three main carriers of the product now instead of bouncing back between the two carriers. I think a lot of people will just not like that. Like I said earlier, I think there will be a lot of complaints
Well, it's always about change, right? And
for sure.
switching. I think what hurts compared to and you have to remove at least my bias from being a kid and the NBA being on NBC and then moving to ESPN. Um, that was a difference, but there wasn't anything iconic about NBC, about the NBA on NBC, besides inside stuff and Round Ball Rock, right? Like now with TNT, like inside the NBA is an institution of just sports television. So for over 30 years. So that show being eliminated, I think, is a huge blow to just sports in general. However, the demographic that the NBA wants to reach is young people, right? So, and how they're watching these games, are they going to be watching NBC on a 9 o'clock on a Tuesday? Probably not. They're going to be watching highlights on Twitter like they always do. So I think their main demographic is not going to be affected by this in the long term. I think this is more of a hardcore sports, like kind of morning. I think it's going to be weird because it's almost like this is going to be a player retirement, but it's going to be a TV show instead. Like it's going to be a very unusual feeling because it's almost going to be like a morning. It's going to be like a year long funeral for the show. It's like the countdown to pulling the plug that this iconic franchise has been around. It's probably going to be, I would say, I mean, really, the rookies are not that big of a story in the NBA coming this year. And, I'm just trying to think the Celtics won the title. But honestly, I can see this being the main story of the NBA. I mean, this is going to be a huge deal when this season starts. So, yeah, I think I agree with you. People are going to be outraged. At the same time, with Amazon, that component is going to be interesting because as much as I hate the interface, the NFL, I believe when they had their game either on Black Friday or Christmas, I mean, their sales just went up. That integration, that product integration is huge. So that's something not to be dismissed either in terms of people just wanting to buy crap and then just watch the games too. This makes it a lot easier. So,
True.
I overall, I think in 2 years, we'll get over it. And I am, my thing is just from a hardcore basketball perspective, is just how the NBA is going to be presented because I have been a huge advocate of TNT. I'm not a fan of ESPN's coverage. I mean, Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, I think they're good. And I think, Mike Breen does a good job. I know I like Doris Burke, but I don't know. I think TNT just presents basketball as it's supposed to be, which is fun. And I just think in ESPN, it's just kind of too corporate-y. It's just
Yeah.
too business-like. And I can't like put my finger on like, all these different instances, but you kind of listen to it. You got to have like TNT just has the fun. Like just have Chuck and Shaq just call a game for no reason. Or
ESPN is forced. TNT
it's
is
very
natural.
forced. It's just very forced. Like I don't know if you saw the finals with they're in Dallas, and it just had them all go out and just do like a rodeo thing, like for on NBA Today. It's just this dude. It just doesn't come off the same compared to that was inside the NBA. That would be funny. It's just not. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
So that's my concern with this. The Amazon and the coverage on NBC. It's just how that's going to translate into just the viewers out there. I am worried about that with TNT just missing that void. So
Yeah, going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And, the majority of basketball fans, I think, are actually not watching the games anyway and will continue to get it off of social media.
Yeah, totally.
But it will be a big deal to those hardcore fans who are tuning in. So, as always, we will check back in on this. This is a constantly developing story and has been for a long, long time. So we will see how it goes as the 2024-2025 season kicks off and then beyond when this deal actually takes effect in 2025. Any other thoughts on the TV deal before we move on?
Not much. I think, it's probably going to be it's a huge disconnect between younger and older fans because, that first broadcast, like you mentioned, when you hear round ball rock, people are just going to freak out and his minds are going to be blown and younger fans will be, what's the big, why is this happening? So I think that's going to be a cool moment to watch just that first, 2 minutes of just hearing that theme song on NBC because it's been on Fox. That's the weirdest thing is that it's been for their college basketball coverage. And it's just like, why is this? It feels weird. It's just like, I don't know. You're just hearing orchestra music and it's just like the NFL. Like, why do you have it? It doesn't fit. So I'm glad the song is at its normal home. So,
yeah, back where it belongs.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, quickly to get kind of bolster some of the points you were making earlier about ratings, Justin, I just wanted to catch your thoughts on the WNBA All-Star Game that recently took place. I did happen to look and confirm what I already thought to be true is that this year's WNBA All-Star Game shattered previous ratings marks, had 3.44 million viewers. This is according to an article from the New York Times. And even if those rating numbers are kind of just in ballpark of that number, I think that's pretty impressive. I think in terms of basketball all-star games at this point, like you and I have bemoaned in the past, they're not really competing against a great product with the NBA All-Star Game. So I think their game probably was a lot more competitive and interesting. And from pieces that I saw of it, it was. But were you able to take in All-Star Game weekend?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on it
Yeah, I
for the
watched it all.
WNBA?
Yeah, I think very well done. I think really the only negative of the weekend was Pitbull was the performer. The halftime show was terrible, but other than that, I thought it was a fantastic weekend. They had a 3x3 showcase. That's cool.
Mm,
I think that's something that they could push within the men's side of things. So that's number one. The 3-point contest was awesome. That was great. Shout out to Alicia Gray. She won the skills challenge and she won the 3-point competition. So
yeah.
former guest of the show killed it. So that was awesome just to see the All-Star game. And I want to pass this idea to you because I know we kind of ran on time on this first topic, but it just seemed like representing your country in these All-Star games because they've done this format before. Just seems like they play harder compared to if it's just East versus West. And I'm
Mm,
wondering for the men, if you do instead of this in-season tournament, because I know they're really pushing this. It really this easy in-season tournament has zero stakes to it, to my besides money. Um,
right.
what if you just do something international instead? Like you got all the players, like just take a break and honestly just fuse it into the All-Star break, and just kind of do a little bit of like a mini like international deal during All-Star weekend. I mean, if you watch the Olympics, like these games, like we'll get to it later, like that's kind of like an All-Star game to itself. I mean, you take a look at Canada, you see how many NBA players are on that team, or even South Sudan, like all those dudes play college ball in America. And then Germany, how many pros they have on that team as well. Like the day of and we'll talk about this later, but the day of just, one NBA star on, these international teams is over. So in terms of this format, I am curious just to see if there is like a Team USA versus the world, like a represent. I mean, I don't know. It's just like you can't have that performance as we did this past year in Indianapolis when you're wearing Team USA on your chest, right? Like, I just feel a Team USA versus Team World, I think would be a cool concept to see and maybe get a little bit more competitiveness. Am I wrong about
Yeah.
that, or is this game hopeless? No matter what format it is.
No, I think you bring up interesting points. And I think anytime you can have a deeper connection to, the nations these guys are coming from to
Yeah,
play in America, I think that's a cool opportunity. I think it's also a chance to educate the fans more. Like I always thought it was really cool learning about like where Dikembe Mutombo was from, where
yeah,
Hakeem Olajuwon came from, to come play basketball. Dirk Nowitzki being from Germany, etc. Uh, I think it's cool. I think it weaves a deeper connection to the story of the game as well, and a little bit more of the human element too. And I do think you're right in your opening point about just having that sense of national pride can oftentimes inspire players to play harder. Like Team World does not want to take a loss to Team USA. We have Giannis and Jokic on this team. No way we're going to lose to Team USA. I am all for it. I am for almost anything aside from what we had last year in the NBA All-Star Game. I'm sorry to be so negative on it, but I don't
no.
know how to be any nicer about it.
A disgrace. I mean, I think you're being charitable. I think it was just a mockery of basketball, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would almost rather like not have an NBA All-Star game than have a repeat of what we have seen in recent years, and especially this most recent one.
Yeah,
So I'm with you. And if they could do some kind of maybe tournament that starts at the beginning of that week and then maybe peaks in All-Star game, like if you were going to go country by country, or if there's not enough players from a given country, maybe you could do regional type of thing to create some teams. I think it's a very interesting idea. And it also has been proven successful with like EuroLeague and, soccer tournaments, football, as they call it on that side of the pond. So I think it's worth exploring.
and they want more experience. I mean, this the whole thing. We'll get to it later. Is why they might be struggling. Is that they've only been together for 3 weeks, but if they're practicing during the All-Star break, there you go. I mean, that's more continuities.
Yep, absolutely. No, I am all for it. I think it's smart that the WNBA All-Star Game does it that way with, and it makes logical sense with where the timing is and over the course of the season and everything. But it's cool to know that that's like prepping them now for their international games.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Awesome. So sounds like we're pretty bullish on the WNBA All-Star Game, other than Pitbull, compared to the NBA All-Star Game, especially. So shout out to them for putting on a good show this year. Justin, this has been a big controversy. I don't know if we want to take a lot of time on this or not,
Sure.
or just give some quick thoughts. But I do think it's worth bringing up because it's been maybe a media generated thing, but kind of natural too. We all know that Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are rivals in the WNBA, and that's from legitimate previous experience playing against each other in the college game, which is awesome. That's great. That's been a fire that's been burning and leading to success in the WNBA as well. They have also been pulled into this rookie of the year race because, as we both know, they are both rookies. If you've been paying attention, you know that. And they're rivals. And Angel Reese is a great rebounder. She had that double-double streak, historic double-double streak, most of all time. I believe it ended at 15 games, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a big kind of feather in her cap, so to speak. Caitlin Clark is averaging numbers that we've never seen any WNBA player average in terms of points, assists, and rebounds, and what she's done. So I have thoughts on this. I think you already know what my thoughts are on this, Justin, so I want to throw it to you first. Is this really as big, as close of a race, let's say, as the media is portraying it?
Well, it's so tough because I think there's a couple of myths out there, and one of them is that Caitlin Clark's the only good player on the Fever. I mean, that's false if you watch the games. If you see the record, they're in the playoff hunt now because they got Kelsey Mitchell back. And honestly, when they got Kelsey Mitchell back, what a huge, this team is just different. They just have swagger, confidence, and I think it took a lot of the pressure off Caitlin Clark just trying to be the distributor and the main source of offense on this team. She can just pass and she can just do. I think honestly, I think she likes the 3-pointers, but really getting her teammates involved in that, developing that chemistry with Aaliyah Boston, I think she really enjoys that as well as the rest of her team.
Yeah.
So that's where I have kind of a problem with her just being like she's just the only. If she's off this team, they're terrible. Like I don't think so. If she were to get an injury, would that suck? Yeah, I'd be devastated. I love watching FIFA games, but at the same time, would they be completely out of making the playoffs? I don't think so. Now with Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston and the rest of that team, I think they have a pretty decent roster. Looking at the rookie of the year, it's tough because I've been really bullish on Angel Reese. I really go back and forth. I know I was really pushing Angel Reese hard. I love the double streak. I love the toughness. I love the tenacity. I think she has a lot of intangibles that Caitlin Clark doesn't, and so that's where I lean on Angel Reese. And I understand the stats. I mean, you look at Caitlin Clark, 17 points, almost 6 rebounds, 8 assists. She leads the league in turnovers. I don't really hold that against her because she's a point guard and she's a rookie. Just trying to get to know her teammates. And a lot of those passes, I think her teammates didn't really catch them. You watch the game, so I don't really necessarily think she's just this turnover magnet. It's tough. I really go back and forth on it because I think it's easy to say that Caitlin Clark is the superior player. I think what really kills Angel Reese in this discussion is that she really is a poor shooter. I think that's kind of really a huge handicap. A lot of her shots come near the rim. And I think honestly, if Angel Reese develops like a jump shot, like a DeMar DeRozan, like mid-range game, I mean, she's going to be killer. I mean, that she has Asia Wilson level potential if that does happen, in my opinion. So I'm going back and forth as we're near the break. We have 2-3 weeks with the Olympic break. I am leaning towards Angel Reese, but not as much as I was when we were on the Kings of Sport podcast. Shout out to those guys.
Yeah.
But I think it is fairly, fairly close. I don't necessarily look at like where there are in the standings, just because I mean, if Angel Reese has a terrible second half of the season and Caitlin Clark kills it, and yet the Chicago Sky are in the playoffs and the Fever aren't, I mean, that's not fair to Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
and we
think,
just saw Wembanyama win it in
yeah,
the NBA, and
yeah,
the Spurs were terrible.
yeah, exactly right. So I'm leaning towards Angel Reese. I know Dan Patrick seems that's preposterous. I've heard him say it easily as Caitlin Clark, but
Mm.
I think if you just watch the games, I mean, Angel Reese is really important to Chicago Sky. I mean, I don't know. I think it's kind of you're comparing different aspects of the game, so I lean Angel Reese. But if Caitlin Clark won Rookie of the Year, I don't think it's an outrage. I don't think Angel Reese got robbed. I think it's really close between the two of them.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, and I think my pick would be Caitlin Clark,
Sure.
and I'm kind of along the lines of Vegas, where the Vegas odds aren't
He's a huge
remotely close on this,
no.
and I don't know how much of that is due to the fan influence on this, but honestly, I think the media has been pretty critical at times of Caitlin Clark. So I don't know. And the media ultimately decides this award. So I don't know. There could be a big surprise if there are people out there who are bettors and want the potential to win on Angel Reese. I guess there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do think the last time I saw it, I think it was plus 1050.
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark and like minus 500 Angel Reese. Like it was pretty wide margin there. I tend to just in terms of degree of difficulty of what they're doing, I think Angel Reese is a wonderful surprise with how good she legitimately is already as a rookie. I think there were a lot of questions about how much she would contribute coming in, and she's been great off the bat. So for sure, you have to give her give her a hand for that. I always tend to think if I have to choose between a guard and who's involved in starting the playmaking potentially more often and a post player, which is more where Angel Reese is, I usually side with the guard pretty easily if stats are looking somewhat equal. I do just think Caitlin Clark has been a little bit more remarkable. If we are going record-wise, the Fever last season are a totally different team this season. Some of that, as you outlined, is health, which I'm with you. I don't really team success, I think, should play a part in this, but it can't be a total disqualifier or decider in my book. But the growth of the Fever, I think they are still sitting above the Chicago Sky, ironically enough, and have had a greater plus minus wins improvement compared to them if you're going teams head to head. So I think there are a lot of things Caitlin Clark can rely on for her Rookie of the Year case. I think the pleasant surprise and what, because it doesn't get clicks, what everyone is missing is how great it is for the league that we have these two great rookies that are performing so well. And I know that sounds hokey and that doesn't entertain anyone, but that's the fact of the matter.
That's the truth.
This is great for the league.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The rivalry has really been one of the strongest storylines in the W. And it was highlighted that I think it was Caitlin Clark assisting to Angel Reese on one of those plays. So that garnered a lot of attention.
Very cool to see. Let's get into some Team USA talk briefly. I know we are running long catching up on this episode, but Team USA just very recently, within the last week, won by 1 point to South Sudan. Almost had a Cinderella upset in exhibition play. Team USA doesn't have Kevin Durant back. He should be coming back very soon, is what's reported. Kawhi Leonard was on this team and had to drop out. But you do still have a lot of big names, a very stacked roster, especially compared to what we saw in the World Championships last year. A lot of people are going, in my opinion, overboard and comparing this team with the original Dream Team, and that gets off on kind of a wild topic. We can touch on it if you want, but I think first and foremost, let's focus on the team in front of us. The other game they had recently was a 6-point win against Germany in exhibition play. Germany, of course, the world champions from last time around. So not too surprising that they were able to push Team USA to the brink as well. What are your thoughts on this team? And do you think we're at a place now where people aren't going to be totally outraged? I mean, let's say, people in our age category who had a glimpse of dream teams in the past are people you're in my age, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger. Are they going to be outraged if Team USA loses? And how surprised would you be if Team USA doesn't get the gold? Because they are, in fairness, heavy favorites for it.
So I have a blunt statement and then I have a question for you. So
Sure.
Blunt statement is, if Team USA loses, if they don't even medal, if they get the bronze, silver, and if people are saying that Team USA should be demolishing the competition, then you don't know basketball. Like, don't be like, have you been watching the league over the last 10 years? Look at, we talked about this with Noah. Look at the MVP candidates. Look at who makes this league. This is an international league now. This is, I feel like we've talked about this a long time. We're long past where Team USA is going to destroy every single team within just the international scene, which makes it fun to watch. Like playing, like people were kind of, I know even Gilbert Arenas made some racist comments about South Sudan, but
yeah, that was wild.
If you watch, because I watched that game, you hear the commentator, he's saying all those dudes played college ball. Like all those guys have major experience. And then also Luau Deng is, I think, an assistant coach on that team. Like NBA has gone out of their way to cultivate Africa for talent. So It's not a shock that South Sudan was able to hang with Team USA for people that actually watch basketball. So that's number one statement. Number two, this is an honest statement, honest question. For LeBron, this past season with the Lakers, how motivated do you think he was on the Lakers? Or roughly past couple of years? How do you think he has been just on the Lakers, like in terms of motivation, output, performance?
That's a great question. I think the motivation has been clearly on the side of getting his numbers. I don't know that it's been fully invested in winning basketball for the team.
Okay.
That's not intended as a slight on LeBron. He's 39. Maybe in more ways it's a slight that they haven't been able to boost Anthony Davis or someone else into taking over. But anyway, I'm digressing. Please continue.
No, I asked that question because if you watch these games, it is clear that LeBron is super motivated. I have not seen him this motivated in a Lakers uniform, maybe since they won the title in the bubble. Like, he's just playing with a certain ferocity. Like, in that South Sudan game, he was like, we're not losing to this team. And same thing with Germany. Like, he is just, I don't know, the aggressiveness that he is playing. And maybe it's just the tournament style where he can just go all out for 2-3 weeks and just take a break compared to the NBA season where that's a lot to do at 82 games and he's older. But I think it's very, very clear, like, in this span, this is kind of a younger, the sprier LeBron that I've not seen in a long time. So I think that's what I am wondering. Like him, I don't know if like he should just play international basketball just for permanently, because he just looked like the old LeBron. He looks spectacular. And I don't necessarily see that with the Lakers, and I don't know what the disconnect is. And so I'm curious where I hear this narrative like he's super old, but yet he's Superman. When they need to win the game, he just goes to the lane and just drives the ball into the basket. Like he's just I think he's playing with arrogance, which I think is a compliment. I don't think that's a diss. I think he's playing with just this ferocity that I have not seen from him in a very, very long time. And I'm just wondering, why can't he transfer that to the Lakers? I just wonder why the disconnect is.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I don't think we'd be able to answer it. You got to dive into the psyche of LeBron James. That's interesting. That brings to mind, I wonder if LeBron is trying to emulate what he saw personally firsthand with 2008 Kobe.
There you go.
on that team.
Yeah.
He is the senior statesman. I don't mean that as an insult or anything
Sure.
for this team. He is the one who needs to light the fire under the young guys. And we know even for Steph Curry, this is his first Olympics. So even this is kind of a new thing for him on
Yeah.
the international game, and it should bode well for him with this 3-point shot and a little closer opportunities on some of those shots. But yeah, it is an interesting statement. Maybe it's the accolades of getting another gold medal is certainly a big deal, and I think LeBron takes that seriously, and it's good to see him take that seriously. And maybe it's because he knows when you look at the Lakers over the last 3 to 4 years, really they should not have been all that much in the title contender conversation. I'm sorry, Lakers fans, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
Whereas in this conversation, I mean, it will be there will be criticism if Team USA does not get gold. I personally won't be surprised if they do not get gold, but there will be big time criticism, especially now with the names that are on this roster.
I think this tournament has the chance to be one of the greatest international tournaments we have ever seen, and I hope
hope
it
so.
gets the attention. And I hope if USA does not win, people understand why that is the case, and not that is some kind of disgrace or they're embarrassing their country or they didn't take it seriously. Like, it is because the game has been globalized because of what happened with David Stern and the Dream Team. So I just hope that's the case, because these two games were awesome. Like, I mean, honestly, they're way better than the playoffs. I think, like, just
Mhm.
the emotion, the attention, like, and you talked about the All-Star Game. I mean, this is what you want. You imagine all these stars are motivated. You get all these guys in their primes wanting to win, playing for something. I mean, what more can you ask for? So yeah, I think this is so far. I know it's been 2 exhibition games, but this is made. I mean, they beat up Serbia. I thought that's gonna be way closer, and they kind of handled them pretty easily. But I think so far, I've been really pleased, despite the games being close. I've been very pleased with just the competitiveness and how just serious the basketball is, despite the flaws Team USA may have.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we'll see how they perform. I
Yeah,
mean, if there are scenarios where I think Team USA can embarrass themselves,
sure.
but you're right in that, as we've talked about with Lee Ellis and plenty of other guests on the show, yeah, the tides are rising around the world, and they are catching up, if not almost all the way caught up to where USA started from. So, yeah, be fascinating to see if USA can carry it out and win as the favorites, get that gold medal. I'm fascinated. Just on a side note, I don't have analysis about it, but just to see Gobert and
Oh yeah,
Wembanyama on the court together more for home Team Paris
those
for
games are
this
going to be
Olympic
crazy.
squad.
Yeah, the
Now
Team
Paris has
France,
been terrible in the exhibition. They've lost all
really.
their exhibition games.
Wow, crazy.
Interestingly enough.
Hmm.
Uh, but I don't think that's necessarily an indicator of what's to come for them,
We'll
because
see.
if you've got Wemby, I don't know. I mean, the fit of having them both on the court is maybe pretty interesting, but you also have a more packed paint in the international game, so you'd figure it's going to be tough to shoot anything around the rim around those guys.
Well, it's so much pressure because of their standing in the NBA, the rookie class of a bunch of the French players. So, and if they're the host country, so it's one of those things. I mean, if they get bounced early, I mean, honestly, the pressure is really on France, to be honest. Like, if you take a look, I would say it's slightly above Team USA. I know,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people that are just super nationalistic, they'll just pick USA automatically. But I think France has a lot of proof. All this NBA talent, I know just there's a lot of questions in terms of how their impact's going to be. I know Alex Sarr didn't really play well in the summer league, so there is some questions there in terms of not only just
Sure.
internationally, but how they're going to fit in within the NBA overall. I know there's been a criticism of Rudy Gobert, and Victor Wembanyama is supposed to be the next big time player of the league. If they both play badly, I mean, it could be kind of embarrassing for France and not Team
Yeah.
USA. Even if Team USA gets the silver, I mean, if France gets, they can't make the medal, they can't make the knockout stage. I mean, I think that's very interesting points with all these teams. So
Yeah, and the other one that I'll throw in just real quick is I like that Team Canada is a
Yeah,
rival
me too.
to us now with how things ended last year, and also just that roster is stacked.
Hmm.
They're a force on the main stage. So interesting to see some new powers, and also just for us as fans to have the ability to talk about these teams and actually know players on the roster
And care.
is a total
Yeah,
exactly is a total game changer in the media landscape and in the sports landscape at large.
yeah,
That's unique to how it's been in the past.
yeah.
So wanted to finish off just with a little bit of recaps for our favorite teams off seasons real quick. Figure we put it at the end of the show here. Justin, I want to give you the stage first. There's been a lot of changes for your Chicago Bulls. My comments on the Rockets are pretty easy, so I'll finish out really quickly. But DeMar DeRozan has moved on to the Kings. Alex Caruso is now with the Thunder, and you guys pick up Josh Giddey on just that 1-for-1 straight up deal. What are your thoughts looking at the Bulls? If you caught anything on Summer League or otherwise, just with the directions they took this offseason? I know on our show, I mean, your almost motto about the Bulls has been blow it up.
Yeah,
and
totally.
and we've seen some of that take place. I still think Zach LaVine will also be moved eventually at some point. But what are your thoughts right now on the Bulls in their offseason?
Yeah. I think as much as people like Alex Caruso, I like Alex Caruso, but is he an all-star? No. So to me, with Josh Giddey, he's younger. Despite how I feel about him personally, we'll see. There's some upside there. I think with this team, it's very clear that they just need to move on with a newer vision. So that's where I have questions with. And to me, I think Vucevic should be traded. I don't. Why is he on this team? So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think also Zach LaVine, no one wants him. So it's just like
Right.
it's so bizarre because he had puts up really good stats, but no one wants this guy. So I don't know what you do with him. He's kind of like a lame duck player per se. Um, and I'm happy for Demar. I mean, it's going to sound weird, but I'm glad he's playing for a team that has a chance to be competitive and go for a championship. And so I'm happy for him being in Sacramento. I don't know how it's going to work with them in Sacktown in terms of their title chances, but he loves the California area. I know he's from there. So, but I will say him, honestly, I would say I enjoyed him, and this is going to seem blasphemous, but I enjoyed him as a Bull compared to Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler. To be honest, they had more
Wow.
success. I just felt there was so much just drama, and then Derrick Rose got hurt, and I don't know. It just seemed like a weird vibe with that team, even though they were way more successful. I just think DeMar really took pride of being a Chicago Bull. I'm not saying
Mm.
those guys didn't. They did. They really. I think all three guys harnessed really what it meant of the history of Chicago. I'm not dissuading that, but I think with DeMar DeRozan, it just seemed different. Like it just those games. I mean, the games that they were close, and it was some of the teams. It was just like, why is these games close against some of these like weak teams? But yet he made it fun to watch, and I never felt that way about a regular season team that was underachieving. And I enjoyed some of their games. That was very unusual to have those feelings because to me, you don't make the playoffs, you get bounced in the first round. It's just like a regular season; it's a waste of time. But I feel like with Demar, it really made it fun to watch. So I really valued him, and I really dismissed him when he came from San Antonio. I was not excited for him to be in Chicago. I was just like, he's past his prime. What's wrong with this guy? But Bill Simmons had a good point. He's one of the players that has gotten better as he's gotten older.
Yeah.
You don't see that. So yeah, that's a really good point that Bill Simmons made. So overall, I'm happy that he is off to a better place and he can avoid the dumpster fire that is Chicago. Summer League. Matis Vasilis. I think with him, what's interesting that he came from the G League, and there's a very interesting video that Casey Kiernan put out how like the G League's been like a failure and how they were terrible and how they just got rid of the G League. So not the G League,
Yeah.
but the G League Ignite. Sorry, the G League
Right.
Ignite.
Right.
Ignite. Sorry, not the G League, the Ignite, and how they were terrible, and just the concept was just put together pretty brutally. But I do like Mateus. If I've got his name right, if he plays good, we'll see. But I think with him, I like his swagger. He's a Chicago native. He's very confident. He's very aggressive. But the negative, he can't shoot. You got to shoot in the NBA. Like
Hmm.
even if you're like seventh, unless you're a Shaq dominant player, you got to shoot at least 40%. And what I saw from his stats from the Ignite this past season and then Summer League, he said he's making excuses saying, well, it's just an aberration. But if he cannot shoot, I don't know what kind of future this dude's got. And I can see why he dropped because to me, it didn't make sense why the Bulls got this dude in terms of him dropping that low for them to pick him up. I'm like, there's got to be something wrong with this guy. No one else wanted to pick this dude, and it was poor shooting. So if he can improve, I like his swagger. I do think he has a lot of potential to be something, but if he can't shoot, I mean, it is what it. I mean, the stats I saw were not good in summer league. Besides, he had that one big game. Another guy though, but a lot of Bulls insiders have been talking about is DJ Stewart. So they signed him to a two-way contract after summer league. He's going to probably spend time in the G League, but a lot of people are excited about him as a rotation player. He had 37 points against Atlanta in summer league, so it seemed like he made a lot of noise. But it's summer league. It's fun. I mean, we've been there. Cool environment. I mean, if I always say this for any fan that is not in the NBA city, go to summer league at least once because the tickets, I think, I don't know, at least when we went, they were like $50-$60 for one day. And it's a great place for kids, like for kids that are fans of basketball. You see all the players walking around. It's just a different environment compared to if you just go to a Nuggets game or a Hawks game. So if your parents out there, if you have young kids who love the NBA, take them to Vegas, take them to Summer League because I think it's just a fantastic experience. But those are my comments. We'll see what Matetis can do. Bulls off season, whatever. But I'm sure you're more optimistic about your Rockets. What do you think about Shepherd and his performance? What you saw?
Yeah, that's really all that I care to talk about because it was fantastic, man.
Yeah.
He was getting Chris Paul comparisons.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And
I like him.
I thought, no way. And then I watched as many highlights as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something with him. Like, it's one thing. His shot looks like it's legit and looked like it was dropping in those games as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that stood out to me was just how he could maneuver around just outside the paint.
Mm-hmm.
And guys were giving him space and respecting his speed, but then also very reactive if he would pump fake. And so basically he's putting players on skates a little bit when they're on defense already as this rookie. I think he is undersized coming into the league. He's going to have to bulk up a little bit. He doesn't look very imposing, but there's a craftiness that he brings to the table that is something that Houston greatly needs. And I think the takeaway, is that if he develops, even if he's coming off the bench, as he most likely will be this upcoming season, I think when you think of the players that are due for extensions and things like that, and decisions need to be made, I would be very nervous if I were Jalen Green at this point, at least if you are dying to remain a Houston Rocket. I don't know. Reed Shepherd might play you off of that roster. And Jalen Green will get great opportunities elsewhere too. It may also be a situation where they see him and they're like, well, we've got a team option on Fred VanVleet, so we're going to go ahead and either trade him off to another team at the deadline, or just go ahead and not take this option and use the money to sign and extend some of the players that are becoming due, like Şengün and Jalen Green, for example. So there's a lot of options. My concerns with the Rockets, which granted Raphael Stone has, in my opinion, been doing a pretty solid job as a GM. We've just got to get a winning record and get back in the playoffs now. At this point, it's time to do that. But he's done a very solid job. They have some huge decisions to make this season. I think that's going to be one of the main stories of the Rockets, but I do think they're going to climb their way up into the play-in tournament at least. And as far as the offseason goes, I'm just grateful they held on to that third pick. And you're seeing why, being first team summer league easily for Reed Shepherd, you're seeing why a lot of people, including the Rockets, valued him as the number one overall pick in the draft. I think there may be some buyer's remorse for the Atlanta Hawks in a way, even though you have Trae Young on that roster. I don't know. You could have still picked Reed Shepherd and maybe move on from Trae Young if that's the move, or develop him under Trae Young for a bit. So I think that's all I got on the Rockets. I do feel encouraged, Justin. I don't think they're competing for a title anytime soon, but they're taking steps in the right direction. They got another key piece this year who could be the point guard of the future, especially with how important offense is in the NBA nowadays. Reed Shepherd could be a big difference maker.
Yeah, no, it'll be exciting to see. They're one of the most exciting teams in the league. Can't say that the same about the Bulls, though. So enjoy.
I think, in a way, the Bulls get a little bit more exciting in some ways, but you're going down to that like development phase that the Rockets have been in for a little bit.
They got good young core. Honestly, if they just focus on their young players and got rid of all these veterans, I'd be down, even if they're like one of the worst teams in the East. Like, I just like to see some potential in building some youth. But when you have Levine, you have Vucevic, just like, what are we doing? Just get rid of them. Like, I'm down to go for a youth movement. So
I think you guys will trade Levine when push comes to shove. I just think it's going to take someone contending that wasn't expecting to contend, that has a little room maybe to do that and wants to bring just a little bit more firepower in. I think it'll get done. These deals are often more movable than they seem, as you and I both know. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. A nice fat episode, if I may say so, of In the Lab with Hoopsology. We were long overdue for it, so appreciate you guys listening all the way through if you made it this far, and thank you as always for the support of the show. Stay tuned for Team USA, men's and women's. Check out friend of the show, Noah Eagle, who was our most recent interview that we dropped earlier this week. He will be the play-by-play broadcaster for those squads. We wish them the best of luck out in Paris. And go Team USA in general. Let's bring home a ton of medals this Summer Olympics. For Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. See you next time. Peace out.
See you later.